Hey, Patreons, welcome back to the Spotlight. This is, of course, our segment where we get to talk to creatives and celebs in the pop culture space of all the things that we enjoy. And we are joined here today by a man who has produced and been part of more stuff on the ground level than you could ever possibly imagine. Somebody whose face I probably saw 35 years ago in a fan film. This is Dan Madsen talking to us. Dan, how are you this evening?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. No, it's awesome to meet you. You are of course the guy between the official star behind the official Star Trek fan club. Starting in the 80s, running into the 90s, and then pushing into the early part of this century, if I'm not mistaken, all the way to
That's right.
the Star Trek communicator, which to my right, I actually on this bookshelf I have volumes of those. So I was a very avid reader. And then you are also the president of the official Star Wars fan club, obviously, for a very long time, and cameoed in a film, which we will get into talking about. So you've got more, Star Wars and Star Trek cred than anybody outside of an actor or a writer who has been on screen or been a part of writing something. So uh, let's just get into it. Just tell me how did you get started doing everything? How did it evolve for you?
Well, it all started with Star Trek. Star Trek, when the first movie came out, I was a huge fan of it, and I decided I was going to start a fan club, kind of just based around the movie. And there were other local clubs all around at that point, of course. So I did, and I started putting out a newsletter. Um, Star Trek, the Motion Picture Fan Club, is what it was called. I got a job in a print shop, started being able to make my newsletter look more professional. I started sending it to Gene Roddenberry, who actually really liked it, and he contacted me, and we stayed in touch. He would give me feedback on the issues that came out and how much he
That's
loved it, and it just got more and more professional till I happened to have Paramount contact me and said, "Hey, you're doing this without a license," and I said, "Yeah, well, you know what? I'm just a kid doing this in my mom and dad's basement," and so they flew me out to Paramount. We had a meeting, and Gene was in the meeting, and he said, "This is the guy I want to do our official Star Trek fan club." Lo and behold, I get a contract in the mail, and the rest is history. And it just started growing and growing. And About '87, I got a call from George Lucas's head of licensing, who said, "Hey, we love what you're doing for Star Trek. We'd like to see you do that for us. We just closed down our Star Wars fan club. Would you be interested in doing that for Lucasfilm and Star Wars?" And I said, "Sure." So I flew out to Skywalker Ranch, met with George and his head of licensing, Howard Rothman, and the next thing you know, I'm doing Star Wars. I'm doing Lucasfilm, and that really encompassed because Star Wars hadn't come back yet. The prequels were
right.
not in the books at that point. So I covered Willow and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and these other Lucasfilm projects until they started work on the prequels. At which point, then we changed the name from the Lucasfilm Fan Club to the Star Wars Insider, which the magazine still exists today,
Yep.
Right.
and covered everything under the sun for the new prequels. And so that's basically kind of the in a short and sweet how I went from nothing to Star Wars and Star Trek. And as a result of Star Wars and Star Trek, I also had the licenses for Back to the Future and Lord of the Rings. So
Oh my
all
gosh.
four of these big franchises
Wow.
had my finger in.
Holy cow. I was a member as a child of the Star Wars fan club that it sounds like preceded what you did, the Bantha tracks. And I'll
Bantha
bet
tracks,
if I dig enough in this foot locker that's to my right, I probably still have an issue of it from
yeah,
1981. I would
yeah.
not be surprised.
Do you know I was one of the first members? Because when Star Wars came out, I was 14 years old, and I joined the fan club as soon as I heard about it. I was probably one of the very first members of that original Star Wars fan club. So to be
Wow.
able to take it over was kind of a real honor for me because I kind of grew up being a member of the original fan club.
Right.
That's
Wow.
cool.
My goodness. All right,
I was
Peter.
not alive at that point, but I know my
Yeah.
mom was part of it. So
Well, you're in the
Uh,
Star Trek world, Peter. You can time travel back and
Yeah,
yeah, so
right.
I can
take a
make it
look.
easier for
Yeah,
myself.
get behind the helm and fly us around the
There
sun.
you
Let's see what we
go.
can do.
Yeah.
So since you've been involved in so many different franchises and so many different fandom groups, um, most of us like enjoy all of these, but not like as like being kind of the forefront of leading like the fan groups and like how we all have fun with it. So I'm sure you get asked a lot, but how do you approach like this is my first love, this one's my favorite, or this one's better? How do you deal with that conversation when it inevitably happens?
I've been asked that so many times over the years, and my answer is always the same, and that is I love them equally. I mean, Star Trek will always hold a special place in my heart because when I was a little kid, um, 14 years, before I was 14 even, I'd come home from school and watch Star Trek reruns, and that's when I first fell in love with the original series, and that one really helped me get through some difficult times growing up. So the original Star Trek will always hold a special place in my heart. But then when Star Wars came out in '77, that also took over a special place in my heart because I remember such grand memories of sitting in the theater and watching the movie and being blown away by it and standing in line, all the way around the theater waiting to go see the movie for, maybe the 12th time. So I really, it's like, two children. You don't pick one that's your favorite. I love them both equally, and I really could not pick a favorite. Each of them has a special place in my memory from what I did at the time um,
Yeah.
when I was first introduced to them.
I probably feel the exact same. It's kind of a flip flop because I was born in the '70s, but The Empire Strikes Back when I was 4 years old was the first movie that I ever saw on the big screen. And then right around that same time, in the '80s is when the original series was so big in syndication. So I saw my first episode on a TV station in Detroit, which is my hometown. That was the pilot. It was where no man had gone before. So it's like I started at the beginning, and it was several years later that I really became a big fan, and then so much back and forth. But yeah, yeah, I think a lot of Star Trek fans. I feel like all of us Star Trek fans love Star Wars, but it's unfortunately not necessarily the other way around because they're so different.
Yeah,
Which I can absolutely appreciate. So it kind of segues me into my question. So Peter and I have been a part of a Star Trek fan club here in West Michigan where we live,
sure,
and
sure.
I've had I would say they've run a bit hot and cold for me. I've had some good experiences. I've had some experiences that kind of chased me out of it because people can be kind of weird sometimes in fan clubs up and down. But I guess my real question is, at a fan club's peak, what do you think a fan club does best? What do you think it really offers someone who loves what we love?
Well, it's two different things. If it's an international fan club, like the one that I ran, um, our goal was to send information. Because we started before the internet existed,
Right.
so you couldn't go online and find out the latest about the new movie or who was cast for it. I mean, only there was maybe Entertainment Tonight, those kind of shows that might have a blurb about something happening with Star Trek. So what we did back then was supplied people or fans with information about what was going on, interviews with the actors and behind the scenes people. So it's two different things because if you have a fan club like mine, that's the main purpose. But if you have a local club, the main purpose is for fans to get together to enjoy each other's company, to celebrate Star Trek and go to events together, maybe conventions, or watch the episodes together. So it's a much more personal experience if you're in a club that's locally based, as opposed to one like mine, which was official and it covered all over the world. And we just didn't have special meetings of fan club members because we were too spread out over the whole world, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
So the
Gotcha.
magazine was the main way we communicated and reached out to our
Yeah.
membership.
Excellent. Very good. Very
Cool.
good. Peter.
Um, so speaking of the big international fan club, while you were head of that, was there a specific moment that stands out to you as like one of your favorite things that you got to participate in with that?
Are you talking about Star Trek?
Star Trek particularly, but if there's a
Yeah.
Star Wars one too, that'd be great.
Well, Star Trek for sure was when um, I was invited by Gene Roddenberry out to the set of Star Trek: The Next Generation months and months before it ever came out on air. And
Wow.
Gene gave me a personal tour of all of the sets. So can
Oh,
you
that's
imagine a fan, just Gene and I? The sets hadn't even that we're not filming at this point, and Gene's walking me around, showing me, well, this is engineering, and then and then he takes me onto the bridge of the Enterprise. This is our new bridge, and to have have that kind of personal tour of these new
that'd
sets by
be
the man who
awesome.
created it all. That was a very special memory, and I remember Brent Spiner just happened to walk by in makeup, and Gene introduced me to him. He says, "This is Brent Spiner. He's playing our new character called Data." And Brent and I said hi to each other, and so Brent walked off, and Gene looked at me, and goes, "He's going to be huge. Wait till you see. He's going to have a huge following of fans." And I remember thinking when I saw Brent at the time, the makeup didn't look so good. It looked kind of shiny and silvery or something. I remember thinking,
Yeah.
"Geez, I hope that looks better on screen because it looks fake in real life. It looks like he's
Right.
got his face covered in makeup." And it did look better, obviously, in the thing.
Yeah.
Um, and for Star Wars, it'd have to be when I was invited out to the set of the Phantom Menace and given a cameo to be in
Right.
the actual movie. That pretty much is nothing really comes close to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't and I'm trying to did they film that? Was that was filmed overseas or was that filmed in California? I can't remember.
No, it was filmed over in London,
Okay.
and the whole time I was filming my little bit was on the back lot of L3 Studios,
Gotcha.
and yeah, I mean it was a incredible experience. All of the cast were there and fitted me for a costume and had it made just to my specifications, and was treated like a movie star on the set. And
That's cool.
I'm sitting there on the side waiting for George Lucas say action, and then I'm supposed to run out. I have an X marked on the ground where I'm supposed to run out and stop and grab the reins of whatever it is I was supposed to be grabbing.
I
I
know
had
there's
no,
nothing there.
I had no idea what it was. And in fact, I remember George telling me, imagine a cross between a dinosaur and a chicken, and that's what
Well,
you're grabbing. And so, what really showed me the magic of movies was because
Yeah.
um, everybody on all the Gungans that were in the parade behind me were just guys in white jumpsuits. So everything was added CG later. Um,
Right.
and when you see the parade scene at the end, there's balloons and confetti, and there's looks like there's thousands of Nabooian citizens when there was only 100 there. So they just doubled them and added them. And then the buildings that went up, just what a normal building would, they went up, they added it so it looked like they went way up into the sky. So I think it was really an opportunity for me to see just how magical movie making is, and what you see when you're filming and what you see in the final product with all of the CG added.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. That's absolutely wild. So, staying on that topic, thinking about iconic imagery, you are the one in '87 at that 10-year anniversary for Star Wars that took the only known, or at least that's what my sourcing
At least
said,
the only
photograph
known.
of
Yeah.
yeah, photograph of Lucas and Roddenberry together, and they're shaking hands and exchanging a meaningful glance. Tell me about that moment. I mean, because to me, in real life, probably the most iconic image in our world
Well,
of those two worlds that
That's
I can
that's
think of.
that's an exciting. Actually, the Star Wars 10th anniversary convention was where I launched the Lucasfilm fan club for the first time. And so Lucasfilm gave me a big long table out in the hallway, and I was promoting the fact that the fan club was coming back, and we were signing up new members at that point. And so I really missed most of the convention because I was manning the table,
Sure,
signing up
I've been
people
there.
into the fan club. And I got word from the folks at Starlong who were running that convention that Gene was on his way. He was coming. It was going to be a surprise to George. So I decided I better get in there. And the place was packed. Everybody was there because George was coming out. And so George is a draw no matter what. And so I put myself in a great position where I could get there, and I knew Gene was coming. And so I just waited for the right moment that as Gene came out and shocked George, because George had no idea that Gene Roddenberry was coming, that I clicked that picture just at the right moment when Gene and George are shaking hand to hand. And it was really kind of a surreal moment for me because here's the two men that created these franchises that absolutely changed my life. I mean, I grew up just, I don't know what my life would be like if Star Wars and Star Trek hadn't entered into it. And suddenly here I am standing almost in front, because I was right almost in the front row, standing in front and watching these two men who so affected my life meeting one another for the very first time. So it's an honor for me to have that picture out there everywhere and know that it's iconic, and that's that, you know, those guys did so much for my life that it was really a very surreal moment when I watched that.
That's incredible. I would, if I ever got a copy of that image and you and I ever met, I would have you sign it for me. That's what I would do.
And I would
That would
sign
be
it for you.
amazing. What's that?
I said, and I would be happy to sign it for you.
I will keep that in mind. All right, Peter.
Um, we kind of already talked about the Star Wars cameo, which was absolutely amazing. You also had a speaking part in Free Enterprise, where you got to see some of the other, where you got to work with some of the other Star Trek actors.
That's right.
How was that?
Well, that was really an interesting trip because Mark Altman, who obviously was one of the producers of that film, had asked me to come out, and he said, "We want to give you a cameo," and it was really kind of a whirlwind trip because I had flown out that morning to have big meetings at Lucasfilm, and then I flew from San Francisco right up to L.A. and got there at about 6 in the evening, and they were shooting overnight the free enterprise scene that I was supposed to be in, which was at this big party bash kind of thing. And so, and I'd known Bill Shatner before that. He and I had been friends, and so I got there, and they got me all dressed up to look kind of like Alexander from Plato's Stepchildren. That was kind of the homage for me, is because he knew Mark and Robert Burnett knew how much that episode Plato's Stepchildren affected me. And so they said, "Well, you're going to be Alexander in this movie." And so I got there and I got in my costume, and Chase Masterson and I were in the scene together. So she and I sat and watched them getting ready for the scene to shoot, um, and so I got on there and we did that. And this was like about 2 in the morning that we shot that scene when Shatner gets up on that stage and starts rapping. And, you know, and I'm down in the audience, you know, jamming with him, watching him do that. And, uh, and so that was also kind of a surreal moment, to be quite frank. And
Yeah.
afterwards, Shatner asked me back to his dressing room, and so I got back there, and he was really, you know, concerned. He says, "How did it go? Do you think I did all right? How was it?" And I was like, "Bill, you were great. You know, I would never have realized that you could rap like that." And so, you know, we sat and talked for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, because he was concerned how it came out. I assured him it looked great. And so what was really interesting is that I went back to my hotel room at about 3, 4 in the morning. Had to get up at about 6 because I had to catch a plane to fly to New York, because Shatner was launching his. Remember those the phone cards you could
Oh
get,
my God, yeah.
you know, and you would did time on it, and you could call using that. Well,
Had him in college.
he was launching a Star Trek phone card, and he was having a huge press conference back in New York, and he wanted me to get up during the press conference and talk about the Star Trek phone card he was launching. You know, essentially say this is the best phone card I have ever seen. You know, and so I got up there. I flew back to New York, met Bill back in New York, went to the press conference, did my little bit for that. And then finally, after an exhausting 3 days, I was able to fly home and just kind of rest up. But that was a whirlwind trip during that period.
Oh
Wow.
my gosh.
San
You and the
Francisco to
you
LA, LA to New York, and New York back to Denver,
Oh my gosh.
all in a matter of 48 hours.
That's
That's a
crazy.
lot of plane time.
Oh
I don't
my
think I could
goodness.
do it at 63. I don't think I could do it today, but I was a young buck back then, so I could handle it.
I'm gonna ask you a bonus question, and then I'll start to wrap it up because this has been
Sure.
absolutely fantastic. And I know we already did, hey, you can't pick your favorite children, so I'm not gonna make you choose between Star Trek and Star Wars with this question.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
I'll ask you two questions.
Okay.
Name for me your favorite segment of Star Trek, or even a top five.
Oh, well, it's very easy for me to name that. And that was the episode that changed my life. And that was Plato's Stepchildren. Not the greatest episode ever
Sure.
made, but the moment when Alexander sits there and looks at Kirk and says, "What is it like where you come from?" And Kirk looks at Alexander, says, Alexander, where I come from, size, shape, and color makes no difference. That was the very first episode of Star Trek I ever watched. And that, I think it was fate that had me watch that.
Wow.
And it kind of like it was like a light bulb going off in my head. And from that moment on, I became a huge Star Trek fan, followed it, bought merchandise, went to conventions, and I had the privilege of Shatner wrote a book called Get a Life, and
Yep.
he called me up and asked me if he could do a chapter on me in the book. And so I flew out to LA in his office and sat there, and it was a really it kind of gave me chills when I sat there, and I was able to tell him face to face how that episode changed my life. That line that he said to Michael Dunn in that episode. And I can never forget. After I told him that, he just kind of sat there staring at me, goes, "Oh my God, I got goosebumps," after I told him that story.
Wow.
And that he put it in his book.
That's fantastic. All right. And your answer can't be the one that I was in, but what about your favorite Star Wars? I extend it out to the shows, but you know what? Star Wars to me is always best known for those films.
Yeah.
Favorite Star Wars film, or even maybe a moment in one of those films?
My favorite moment in a Star Wars movie?
Yeah.
That would would have to be probably, I have to go with the little guy aspects of it, and that's the scene in Empire when Yoda says to Luke, look at me, judge me by my size, do you? Another kind of inspirational moment. Um,
Yeah.
and I would just add my very first time I got to go to Skywalker Ranch and interview George in his office, I was able to talk to him about that scene.
Yeah.
And he had told me, here's something very interesting I'll throw into the last. Both of these guys told me in at different times in my interviews with them. Gene Roddenberry told me that his original idea for Spock was to cast a little person as Spock because he thought that would make him really original and different. Of course, that never happened, thank God, because Leonard Nimoy came into it. And when I went and interviewed George Lucas for the first time, George told me that his original idea for Luke and Leia was to make them little people, but he never could find the right actors to play the part. And so I thought it was just very interesting that in
Huh.
their original concepts, as they
Yeah.
were putting it together and putting, they both told me that little people played a part in it. So, I don't know if they were, buttering my bread or what, but it was an interesting little moment for both of those interviews.
That
Yeah.
is fascinating. All right. This has been fantastic. Tell us, what are you working on right now?
Well, I'm kind of semi-retired right now. I'm doing consulting work with a variety of clients. I've been working with Jeffrey Morris, who's got this amazing film documentary he's just released called "The Eagle Obsession" about Space 1999's Eagle vehicle, and
Cool.
people can go and check the website out, theeagleobsession.com. I'm helping him promote that documentary film of his. But I'm working on a lot of different projects. I worked with last year with Pop Culture Coffee to help launch their Star Trek line of coffee. Um, I'm working with a gaming company called Rollicrit that does a lot of amazing games, board games. Working with them, and I'm anybody that comes to me, I'll work with them as long as it's something that I like and I'm a fan of. And I've been so fortunate that everything I've worked on, I've been a fan of, and it really helps to work on something like that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Wow, this has been absolutely incredible. So I cannot thank you enough for your time. If people want to find you out there, they want to engage with you. What are you out on socials?
I
What
am.
do you got?
They can find me on Twitter at or X at the Dan Madsen. I'm on Instagram at Madsen8973, and I'm on Facebook as just Dan Madsen. And I probably post more on Facebook than on either of the other two, but that's probably the best place to find me if they want to follow what I'm doing. And I'm also always posting on Facebook memories and pictures that nobody's ever seen from all my years of working on Star Wars and Star Trek as well. So it's kind of a cool place to get some history about those two franchises.
Gotcha. I will put those in our show notes so that people can reach on out to you. But this has been
Awesome.
absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's been absolutely great.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you offering to have me on. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Patreons, thanks for tuning in. If you're not one of our patrons, you're listening to this on our free feed or on our YouTube channel, please visit patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite and check out all of the other great creator and actor interviews that we have with people in the pop culture space. Our guest has been Dan Madsen. We're very grateful, and we'll see you in the future.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.